In today's video, we're going to be covering my final wildcard draft ahead of game week 4 and running through all the key data you need to make the best decisions this game week. Now, of course, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as we're trying to hit 18,000 subscribers. And it would be absolutely immense if, of course, we could, just smash another milestone on this channel. Now, as I've done over the course of the international break, we have been discussing the 11-5 numbers, and I think it's a real useful metric to, of course, be using when taking a look at a wildcard for the next few weeks. Because, of course, you're not just building a wildcard for a single game week, you're building it for a long period of time. So these are the projected numbers. Of course, if you want to go and check out 11FI's amazing website, there is a link to that in the description, of course, if you want to go and check it out for yourself. They've got plenty of other great features on there, especially for wildcard building as well. Take a look then at the clean sheet data first. We're seeing Arsenal obviously have a big turn up in terms of their clean sheet numbers around game week 7, and of course this correlates with their good fixture run. So I do think this is going to be the ideal time to, of course, hop onto Arsenal assets around game week 7. That's going to be the ideal period for me in terms of my personal opinion. I think that's where a lot of people are, of course, going to be maybe looking at double ups, maybe just a single player as well, like a Gabriel or a Raya as well, depending on the length of Saliba's injury. But I know people are going to be doing it. So I think with a wild card, getting in early to that defense, because if they keep a clean sheet in 4, maybe they keep one in 6 or 5, and then you go into that like without any on a wild card, you're probably going to be booking in some transfers already, which doesn't seem like the smartest strategy for me. We are also seeing a similar kind of fixture swing for Manchester City around game week 6, but it is just trying to pinpoint which kind of defender to go for, really. And I still feel like City aren't full strength, so I probably would avoid them. Liverpool, if you wanted to go for their short-term fixtures, definitely so. But as you can see, around game week 6, we do start to see a little bit of a drop-off in terms of their clean sheet numbers. Chelsea are just going to be a very steady Eddie defenders that I think you could invest in for large parts of the season, to be honest. They were the 3rd best side last season for expected goals conceded, and they've started this season in a very similar vein as well. So definitely some investment opportunities there. Newcastle and Villa, personally, for me, I think with European football kicking off in the next few weeks, probably going to be a void where I wouldn't be looking to target any sort of defenders. Bournemouth with no European football and some great DEFCON merchants, of course Senesi being one of them, feels much more kind of a team I would like to approach. Same with Crystal Palace as well. They've got some absolute beasts for DEFCON. They've also got Munoz as well, who is a very, very attacking fullback, where I feel you could get a lot of value out of him at that 5.5 million price tag as well. If you wanted to go for some Forest defenders, not the most ideal fixture for game week 4, but game week 5 and game week 6 is going to be their standout fixtures. Then they do really tail off. So again, you're probably going to be looking at, potentially taking them out in a few weeks' time. Now, Spurs are the final team I do want to discuss, because I do think they do have some decent value in there. Like, I think, the 11-5 models numbers will start to increase on Spurs the more and more they obviously play. I think, they've been pretty good defensively so far this season already in the campaign, and I think that is only going to continue under Thomas Frank. It's a much more improved defensive unit we're going to see compared to what we saw under Ange as well. So I'm expecting those numbers to steadily creep up over the next few weeks, and they've got some great fixtures. So for me personally, still worth investing in. Now, a lot of people are probably going to be looking at bench boosts over the next few weeks. If I were to wildcard, I think I probably would have that in my back pocket. So you're probably going to be picking from a Leeds or a Burnley kind of defender for the cheap ones. Obviously, Dubravka is going to be the set and forget 4 million goalkeeper as well. So trying to find those fixtures where, of course, they do stand out is probably going to be either game week 5 with a 25% chance of a clean sheet, or in game week 8 with a 30% chance of a clean sheet for Burnley. And as you can see, a 33% chance of a clean sheet if you wanted to go for Leeds as well. So there's definitely some bench boostable kind of, options within the next few weeks if you were to wildcard at this period as well. Let's take a look then at the projected goals for the next 6 game weeks. We're seeing Liverpool top this list, and I definitely think short term, that's where, of course, a lot of people are going to be looking to invest in Mohamed Salah, Gakpo, or you're going to maybe take a kind of a little bit of a punt on Ekitike. For me personally, with a wild card, I don't think I probably would go near it. We're seeing Manchester City's fixtures also take a turn, and you do have that option with this wild card to, of course, maybe free hit in game week 6 to get the best fixture for Manchester City. Or, of course, if you don't take any transfers for the next 2, there is that option to, of course, go and upgrade one of the 4 forward positions, go and get Erling Haaland and downgrade Mohamed Salah, as you can see with some kind of drop-offs for Liverpool over the next few weeks. Chelsea's numbers are going to be pretty steady, and their fixtures again have a big upswing around game week 9. So I probably would be looking at people like João Pedro, if Cole Palmer's fit and available as well, to monitor over the next few weeks. Arsenal, we're seeing again that very similar swing that we saw with the clean sheet numbers. So around game week 7 is probably going to be the ideal hop-on point for their attackers. But I do still think bringing in Victor Gyökeres could still be very, very beneficial right now and get you ahead of the curve, especially if he has a decent game in game week 4, 5 or 6. Maybe, of course, eat up a few price increases across that period. Bournemouth as well feel like a really, really good attack to, of course, invest in, and definitely ones I would be looking at if I were on a wild card this week. Crystal Palace, their short-term fixtures definitely do warrant a little bit of investment. Their game week 6 fixture against Liverpool, though, would, of course, require a free hit if you will go to kind of too much investment in terms of Crystal Palace. But overall, pretty decent numbers across the board from them, to be honest. So I still think you could very easily invest into them. That was the 11-5 data. Of course, if you want to go and check it out for yourself, I will leave a link in the description. Now let's go and dive into that wildcard team. Now let's dive into the defence of our wildcard then, and we have taken the 11-5 data fully on board and of course been looking at utilising the DEFCON contributions as well, because I do feel it is one of those broken metrics, and I'm seeing a lot of other content creators talk about it briefly, but for me personally, I do think it has changed the game a lot, and we are seeing a lot more of kind of defenders baseline points really be kind of elevated, and that is what I've kind of done with Senesi and Anderson. Both of these guys are DEFCON beasts, and that is why I've selected them for the upcoming fixtures. They've also got some decent fixtures as well across that period, so you know they're still going to be pretty good investments where they're going to probably get clean sheets across that period as well. But like I said, their baseline in kind of favourable fixtures has gone from a 2 to a 4, and I'd say they're more difficult fixtures. Say for example Anderson last week, his baseline has gone from a 2 up to a 3, and that's what he managed to achieve against Chelsea as well, hitting DEFCON in 2 fixtures already, and was extremely unlucky not to have hit it in game week 1 as well against Brighton as well. I think he was only maybe like 1 or 2 DEFCON points away from that, so again could have pretty much picked himself up an additional 6 points already this season. Senesi has hit it in every single game already this campaign. There's some good fixtures coming up for Bournemouth over the next few weeks as well. You could very easily chuck him into this side if you really wanted to as well, but of course it probably would require you dropping a midfielder or a forward out of here, and I think for me personally they've probably got a little bit more of upside in this week's fixtures. Obviously we've gone for the double up in terms of Arsenal defence. We saw that with the 11-5 numbers. They're looking really, really good. Get that early investment into the side as well, with like I said, those good fixtures coming up around game week 7, where we're seeing a big fixture turn as well for them, and obviously the increased numbers. Gabriel, of course, is going to be very, very potent from set pieces. The fact that he hasn't scored one yet already this season does worry me, because it does feel like there's probably a massive double-digit haul on the cards at some point for him. And Raya is just going to be a very steady Eddie that gives us that double up in terms of the Arsenal defence, and gives us a little bit of an advantage over the people that are, of course, just going to have one Arsenal defender, because like I said, those 11-5 numbers are suggesting very high probabilities of clean sheets. Now I've gone for Van de Ven in here at 4.6. There are also some other potential DEFCON beasts you could go for at that price point if you wanted to fully hone in on that metric. But like I said, the Spurs fixtures coming up are pretty decent. I know the 11-5 model wasn't too bullish on them, but for me personally, I do believe that there is that opportunity to go for the Spurs defender. They've got the great fixtures, and I wouldn't feel bad about playing Van de Ven most weeks with, like I said, those upcoming fixtures coming up for him and Spurs. As you can see, we've gone for Dubravka and Estev as well. We highlighted it in the last section as well, talking about game week 5 and game week 8 as potential bench boost weeks. Of course, if you've still got that chip ready to be played, then yeah, that feels like the ideal periods to utilise both of these cheap players as well. Heading in for the midfield, and as you can see, we have gone for the double Liverpool stack. Based off the 11-5 numbers, we did see very, very good projected goals coming up for Liverpool over the next 2. So I think going for that double stack of Liverpool players is definitely worthwhile. And I think Gakpo is probably the most secure out of Isak and Ekitike. Obviously, Isak hasn't featured for the international side over the course of the international break. So I do think that means he's going to be benched and Ekitike does start. However, it could very easily be the case where Ekitike TK gets 60, Isak comes off the bench and scores, starts in the Champions League game midweek, maybe earns himself a start against Everton. I think there's just too many unknowns in there, whereas Gakpo on that left-hand side does feel a little bit more secure for right now. Of course, though, we are only going to be targeting those more short-term fixtures with him, and then, of course, looking for alternative replacements around game week 6, game week 7 is probably the period where I would start to, of course, shift away from him. Mohamed Salah has been disappointing. He's been terrible. He's been honestly a joke. He's not been worth the 14.5 million. There's no getting around that. He's been very, very bad. I think he's had one shot in his past 2 league games. However, for the next 2 weeks, he is just a very nice and easy captaincy option to go for. I don't think the other captain's options don't really stand out or scream to me. So I think for me, just going with him on the wild card, getting him for the next 2 weeks as the best captain is probably the ideal approach. Now, like I said, you do then have 2 free transfers in hand where, of course, you could drop him down and, of course, find a way to upgrade one of the forwards to go and get Erling Haaland. That is very much a possibility with this side. And then you'd have the best captain probably for the next few weeks anyway if you wanted to stick with Erling Haaland, who does longer term feel like he could be the more explosive player this season and probably have more goal share compared to Mohamed Salah now that Isak has joined the club, in my personal opinion. Now, the next 2 players I would say feel very, very similar. Both can hit DEFCON, both are very good at creating opportunities for their teammates, and both conveniently take penalties. Lucas Paqueta and Bruno Fernandes do feel like kind of, you know, the pro version and then the wish version. That is how it seems to me and how it feels to me right now looking at both of these guys. But to be honest, having a Bruno kind of Fernandes off wish doesn't feel too bad, does it? The only problem, of course, is that he does play for West Ham. I don't know how many opportunities they are going to create or take for Lucas Paqueta. That is probably the only downside. But to get a player that is on penalties, hitting defensive contributions at 5.9 million, I'm massively not against that. I'm all for it, and I think he could be on for a very, very good season. Obviously, the charges have been cleared around his kind of betting data breaches and stuff like that. So I think he's going to be fully focused on having a great season and probably putting himself in the shop window for a bigger move next summer, because that's realistically where he was heading. He was heading to Manchester City. Then, of course, that move got canned with the news around his kind of betting scandal and stuff like that. So that's why I like him. Defensive contributions, penalties. The only downside, like I said, is the fact that he plays for West Ham. But at the end of the day, you're paying 5.9 million for a penalty taker that can hit DEFCON. Why would you not take that opportunity? The other player is, of course, going to be Bruno Fernandes. We all know what he's capable of. Rob T did a fantastic post earlier on Twitter where he spoke about the fact that Bruno, over the, I think it's 14 games he's played in the kind of defensive midfield role and the 13 games he's played as the cam under Almiron, there hasn't been too much discrepancy in terms of his points per game. So that would suggest to me that I don't think we've got to worry about Bruno playing this more deeper role. Yes, of course, it means that he's not going to get as many attacking returns. But if you look at that metric and see the fact that the points are very, very similar, I think Bruno Fernandes could be a very easy long-term hold for your sides. Despite the difficult fixtures, he could just be one of those players that does just tick along every single week and just starts to accrue points. I think it was like around like a 6 average in the kind of more defensive role that he was picking up. So you obviously factor that in by like 38. It's like 218 points or something ridiculous. Like, that is a decent score for a player for 9 million, 208 points. And nobody's like, you know, going, no, that's bad, that's bad. And there's upside as well, where he could, of course, get more penalties. He could get more open play kind of returns as well. So I like it, and I do think he is probably still one of my favourite and best midfielders to have within the game. Now, the final one is going to be Dewsbury Hall, and he has been the standout kind of option at that 5 million price tag as well. And I believe it is, hang on, let me get their name up so I get this correctly. It is FPL Chardon, I want to say. Apologies if I got it wrong or mistaken. I'll put his name up on screen right now. He, of course, is the co-host of the FPL Script with Fran. Highly recommend you go and check out that podcast as well. Really, really kind of insightful stuff if you're a little bit of a data nerd like myself. And they were, of course, he posts pretty much a kind of, you know, projected goal numbers for the season based off the betting markets from SpreadX. And Dewsbury Hall is one of those players that has had a massive increase because, of course, the betting markets are now seeing he's playing for a very good attacking Everton side in the early doors of this season, and his minutes have been very, very secure, which of course we were a little bit unsure about when, of course, he did make this move. So the betting markets are suggesting that he is going to be, you know, continuing to pick up some more attacking returns across the course of the season. And for 5 million, like I said, I think he is just going to be one of the standout cheap midfield picks. Okay, let's complete our front line then. We've got Mateta, João Pedro and Gyökeres. All of these guys I think could be pretty decent value over the next few weeks in my personal opinion. Of course, Mateta probably a little bit more shorter term with that Sunderland at home fixture. I do worry what impact Sarr is of course going to have on him. Is it going to mean that there's less goals for Crystal Palace? Of course, they've lost Eze as well. That would be my only concern. But getting a striker that's playing 90 minutes on pens with some good fixtures coming up, I don't mind that. I'm always going to invest and buy into that in my personal opinion. That is the way that I'm going to go with that as well. João Pedro, now there has been some kind of controversy with some people in the ground suggesting that he actually gave the penalty to Enzo Fernandez. So if Palmer isn't back for game week 4 or maybe game week 5, we might still see João Pedro on a penalty. Now, I've watched the highlights, I've watched the extended highlights, and I watched the game live, and I didn't see him hand the ball over. So it is all from people in the ground, so we have to maybe take it with a little bit of, like a pinch of salt, but I still think longer term, even without penalties, his minutes are looking very, very good, which of course was the big concern. And one of the reasons I actually didn't go with him at the start of the game, I was very concerned about his long-term minute projections. But now they're looking pretty decent with, of course, that Delap injury. I think with the great fixtures coming up for Chelsea, we saw that on the 11-5 data. I definitely would be looking to invest in João Pedro. I think he's just going to be a very good pick and could be one of those that if you don't have him and he continues just to tick on very, very nicely, he could do some serious damage with his very high, of course, ownership and effective ownership that goes off the back of that as well. Then the final pick is going to be Victor Gyökeres with some great fixtures like we spoke about coming up for Arsenal. We saw it on the projected numbers. Now, you could go without him for the next 3 weeks, in my opinion. There is very much that possibility. But what I'm doing here is buying in early to what I think Gyökeres could potentially be as well. Forest, of course, off the back of a 3-0 drubbing as well. And you could maybe see Arsenal potentially put Nuno to the sword, because usually when things go bad for Nuno, they just continue to get worse. We've seen it at Wolves, we've seen it at Spurs. It's probably now starting to happen at Nottingham Forest as well. And I think, you know, Arsenal, maybe they could be looking very, very good. There's reports that maybe Saka could be back as well, but I doubt they'll rush him back just for the Nottingham Forest fixture. But there are reports that he could be back for this game week as well. And I do think that will, of course, increase Gyökeres' overall opportunities and creativity within that Arsenal attack as well. Let me know what you think of this wildcard team. I personally really, really like it. I think it's a great draft. I think you've got lots of options in here. Of course, captaincy pretty sealed. You've got plenty of penalty takers as well with Salah, Paqueta, Fernandez, Mateta, Gyökeres, and maybe João Pedro as well. You've got some mix of clean sheets with some DEFCON as well. So overall, I really like it. I think it's a fantastic draft. Let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below. Of course, if you've got any questions about your team as well, get them in the comments as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 4.